Okay, everyone, let us begin. Okay, so thank you all for being punctual. Thank you all for the wait. All right, so let's get started. I think I see a lot of familiar faces here, but I'll just introduce myself for those people who don't know me. So my name is Desmond Du. I've been here for a while. Previously I did BFA here in motion media design. Then I worked in Atlanta at Warner Media Studios for about a year and a half. Pandemic happened, and I'm back in grad school, and I'm graduating next quarter. So yeah, this is one of my last few workshops. I'm also a peer tutor, but only just for workshop. For those, if you want to schedule like appointment one-on-one, you can book an appointment with the other peer tutor, Anvik, right? Maybe you might see me on your Instagram or Facebook feed. Show of hands, I'm just curious, like anyone like saw me on their feed?
I just saw that today.
Yeah? Okay, for those who haven't, you will after this workshop. Yeah, but some of my working experience include, working for Warner Media Studios, and I work with a lot of brands underneath that company, like Turner Classic Movie, Cartoon Network, and I freelance a bit here and there. So you can see this is just my working experience. Oh, I'll turn off the music. Give me a sec. Okay, cool. We're back again. So I'm a motion designer that specializes in animation using JavaScript expression. As a motion designer, you don't need to learn code. It's just a bonus. It's just my specialty. So don't feel compelled to every time you see someone saying like on Instagram saying, oh, they use expression to create something interesting or complex, right? You do what's comfortable. But just so happen I use like coding and scripting to automate the process or to create different effects. Here's a sample of my works. So this is my most comprehensive reel. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I've been doing workshops for quite a while. In fact, during this pandemic, I've done some virtual workshops, and it's all available on my YouTube channel called NoSleepCreative. If you guys don't know about it, you can visit it on YouTube. It's just one word, NoSleepCreative. A bunch of tutorials available. That is about like I do master studies that's kind of based on successful motion design work or artists, right? And sometimes you'll find me announcing tutorials, but I've been inactive for like almost 2 years now because too busy with grad school. All the workshops that I've done for SCAD, be it for the academic resources or for MOMI, it's also, like I say, it's on YouTube. It's all under a playlist, so here's a sample of what I have taught, right? 2 of them. I've been cover the behind the scenes for Commotion 2022. So again, YouTube channel, go to the playlist, and go to workshops. All right? Okay, cool. So that's about me. Now we can actually get started with the graph editor workshop. So this workshop will be recorded over Zoom. We're just recording right now. I hope everything is okay. You can actually hear my voice, so you guys can reference it later on after the workshop ends. Okay, so this workshop is broken into 3 parts, right? The first part we'll introduce theory. How do we think about creating motion? We'll look at principles of animations and how it differs from the principle of motions, and how to think about like motion as identities and systems. And then we'll get into the part maybe that you guys are here for, the graph editor, right? Which is how to make yourself comfortable, manipulating the curves and the keyframes in the graph editor, be it the speed graph or the data graph. And then we'll try to implement it in a small little animation project, right, using the techniques that we learned. If you have time, we can do Q&A, extra help if you guys have assignments, or animation that you can help with. You can feel free to just ask me. This workshop ends at 3:30, so my time cuts off there. So during part 2, right, feel free to just open After Effects and follow along. We're just going to explore the graph editor together. All right, so first off, we have, wait, let me just pull up my slide mode first. Presenter view, okay. So I can see my notes. Man, what's the shortcut for full screen?
On that, I think you have to mouse near the bottom corner, bottom left corner.
Oh.
I mean, that'll show you the code.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. I don't think there's a hotkey once.
Ah, I see. Yeah, I'm more familiar with Mac. Anyway, the first part, again, how do we think about motion? You know, I'm sure you guys, look at, have start animating After Effects and you don't know, like, how should I animate this, right? What sort of performance should I give to, the shapes that you're animating? So maybe we can start by basic, by thinking about like the mechanics of animation. And some of the terminologies that you guys are probably familiar with is spacing and timing. But I'll just recap it, right? The spacing is basically the space between, as your animation is going on, is the space between like each object. I don't know how to describe it better, but you can see it's like sorry, the spacing between like the object from one position to the next, right? That's how much. That's referred to spacing. So the more spacing it has, it means faster. And then if they're close bunched up together, it means it's slower. I have a more like obvious example later on. Timing refers to kind of like timing of like say the keyframes. I think keyframe would be a good way to kind of think about like timing. Okay. So here is an overview of like the principle of animation. Right, so let's take a look.
The following has been paraphrased from The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. Squash and stretch. This action gives the illusion of weight and volume to a character as it moves. Anticipation. Prepares the audience for a major action the character is about to perform. Each major action is preceded with specific moves that anticipate for the audience what is about to happen. Staging. It's the presentation of an idea so that it is clear. Straight ahead and pose to pose. Pose to pose is charted with key drawings done at intervals throughout the scene. Straight ahead animation starts at the first drawing and works drawing by drawing to the end of a scene. Follow through and overlap. When the main body of the character stops, all other parts continue to catch up to the main mass. Nothing stops all at once. Slow in and slow out. As the action starts, we have more drawings near the starting pose, one or two in the middle, and more drawings near the next pose. Fewer drawings make the action faster, and more drawings make the action slower. Arcs. All actions, with few exceptions, follow an arc or slightly circular path. Arcs give animation a more natural action and better flow. Secondary action. It's an additional action in the scene used as a supplement of the main one in order to reinforce it and add more dimension. Timing. More drawings between poses slow and smooth the action. Fewer drawings make the action faster and crisper. Timing maintains the appearance of an object abiding by the laws of physics. Exaggeration. Remain true to reality, just presenting it in a wild or more extreme form. Solid drawings. It means taking into account forms in three-dimensional space, giving them volume and weight. Appeal. It's a quality of charm, able to please the viewer's eyes. It's the charisma of the action.
Yeah, so that was the 12 principles of animation. I know that's a lot, 12 things is kind of a lot to remember, but DK Kwong gives a very good overview of like animation principles, right? You want to think about it as like, say in After Effects, we're always starting off with a linear keyframe, so that's boring. Okay, so maybe we use like ease in, ease out, or ease, right? That's level 2. But when you mess around with Graph Editor, that's where you get into detail. We have some customized motion, and then you have time to actually exaggerate it, right? So this is a quicker way of thinking about the 12th principle. But let me just move on. But then again, you know, all the principles of animation does not apply directly to motion design. Hoy Knaus actually proposed the 10 principle of motion design. He actually has a course on Skillshare, but basically, you know, it kind of just removed 2 of the principle. It's all very similar, right? It's all within the context of motion design because we're not dealing with character. We're mostly dealing with like simple shapes, typography, and images. Okay, so just showing you like how it differs. But whatever I just show you, right, be it like the principles of animation or motion design, those are mechanics. It's how you do things. But we need to think about what it is. What is it we're trying to achieve when we're animating or creating motion? And we need to think about the performance, the drama, the tension, as Bruce Lee said, the emotional content. Right? That's the most important part. Right? You want to think about like what mood are you trying to convey? And sound plays a very important part into motion design. The synchronization of sound can give physicality, a sense of realism to animation. So in this title sequence by Hoy Knaus, you know, he used simple shape to kind of convey the mood of like chaos, but there's some sort of playfulness. So I'm gonna play this video. Pay attention to how the synchronization of sound gives the object some sort of like materiality, right? It feels physical, and also yeah, to the whole, not just to the shapes, but the whole piece itself. Okay, so I'm gonna play this video. Right, you can see, especially in the last scene, just that as the shape, you know, it scales up to fill up the screen, there is a bass sound, and that kind of creates an impact, this powerful explosion effect. I'm sure you can also hear like metal sounds that kind of gives like the beating of the shapes together a little bit more interaction, more physicality, right? We'll watch it again without sound and see how your perception differs. So this is without sound. All right. All right, you guys get the point, right? See, without the sound that you don't feel any, you can't feel as much. The animation is still nice, right? It's all very well animated. The rhythm is there. There's some playfulness within the performance of the shape, but still, you know, you can't really sense like, oh, this feels like metal. This feels like wood, right? This material is light or heavy. You can't really sense that. So sound is a big, like I said, it's a big part of like motion graphics. Here's a more contemporary approach by my friend. It's called Tickle. Yeah, even as you see in the beginning, right? There's like sound effects to the eyes, or like its movement gives it some sort of physicality. Small things like that can really enhance animation without you having to do a lot of animation, right? So, one of our professors here, Austin Shaw, who wrote the book Design for Motion, you know, had a quote that stuck with me: "Half of what you see is half of what you hear." right? You need this because, you know, motion graphics is all about perception. It's all about the relationship, the synchronization of visual and sound. You can't just think about the visual, right? And which sometimes we get caught up with. Sometimes we're just too deep into After Effects trying to make something cool. We want to think about a whole bigger picture. It's not just the visual, but also the sound, right? That's why you should go to the sound design workshop with Professor Colette, you know, next Friday. And that's a message from our sponsor, Mommy Love. Okay, but yeah, I feel like this is just a PSA from me about like animation and motion. Sometimes we get too caught up in like tutorials. We're looking for the right tutorials or resources or the expert influencers to kind of give us that direction or that magic tip or technique to figure it out. But the thing is, you know, all you have to do is actually based on observation, right? Making good motion, it's about performance. And it's based on how you interpret it, right? No tutorial is actually going to do that for you. They can teach you the mechanics, but as for how you execute the motion, the performance, the drama, it's all up to you, right? So you want to engage with reality and observe, like, say for dancing, ballet dancing, what makes it more graceful and elegant, right? Maybe you want to think about spacing and timing in performance art and see how that adapts to motion design, right? So that's just a PSA from me. If you guys are interested in learning about animation principle or illusion of life or actually cell animation that does with like natural effects, like natural elements like fire, water, earth, right? You can look up Elemental Magic. So this is good for those who like to do cell animation. It breaks down all the mechanics of like not cell animation, but like how physics and forces work for the different elements, right? Animation Fabricate is good for understanding, the principle which I introduced earlier on. And then Illusion of Life will give you context to how to approach the animation field. But you still need to kind of translate it to motion design because we are all motion media design major. Hopefully all of you guys are, right? But so that's motion design for storytelling. But these days there is I think there's an emerging field, or it's more prevalent now. It's emotion as a system, as identity. In graphic design, right, there's also brand identity, where design a system of how a brand should look, a style guide basically, right? And now there is some sort of like motion system as well, which I'll show you a couple of examples. When it comes to motion design, Duff has this analogy, right, about manipulating performance of the motion. He once told us that we tend to crank it up, right? When we're animating a scene, we tend to crank it up to the max. We need to be exciting for every single element. But what Duff proposes is that we need to learn how to control this dial, right? Sometimes we don't need to go to max, right? Sometimes we need to turn the performance down to level 3 so that something else, it becomes more obvious, right? So people actually know where to focus. When it comes, so in motion design system, Google has it in Google Material Design. They break it down into 3 types of motion. How you can use motion to inform user application, or web application, or just web pages, right? The user experience. So three ways to think about it, and I think it's very relevant, right? When you're making a piece, you want to focus on key message, all right? You want to have a long list of information, or you just want to create performance, just to give off the emotional vibe of the explainability you're trying to create, right? So you can actually look this up, right, on Google Material Design, Understanding Motion. One of alumni, Eli Yu, I don't pronounce his last name. He's a very talented motion designer. I think it's not Microsoft, was it Apple? Can't remember. But he came out with this thing called motion theory, or basically kind of proposed designing a motion system. So over here you can see the spacing and timing. I know it's pretty fast, but try to catch it, right? So when he's designing this the motion identity system for Fox Entertainment, he came out with proposed a couple of motion style, right? Of this is what it means to be, what the motion means, right? Suddenly he's giving meaning to how the spacing and the timing. Okay, so. And all of this applies to the bigger context of the graphic identity system of Fox Entertainment. So this encompasses the whole, not just the motion, but how it's other graphics as well.
Agent Mulder, I'm Dana Scully. breaking news, the blockbuster Disney deal.
A massive deal to combine two of the world's biggest entertainment giants was announced just moments ago.
The world of entertainment is changing.
Did this episode of The Simpsons from 19 years ago predict the future? It shows 20th Century Fox Movie Studios, a division of Walt Disney Company.
See what you got, Fox. See you soon, bitch. Too spicy, too spicy. Oh god, I sent it. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so this was done by the Throwback agency. They come to Commotion every year. So if you are very interested in typography, brand identity, it's a good company to intern or work for after you graduate. And so, this opens up somewhat a new field of motion design. I feel like traditionally we've been making explainer video, trying to make things interesting. So I don't really enjoy that. Sometimes I want to think about whole system, how things fit together into a bigger context or bigger picture for a brand. So think of it as like how brands behave. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Okay, so here's another example, Andrew Ruto. So if you just look at his website now, he completely changed his positioning to as someone who directs like motion identity. So this is one of his motion branding for Viacom. Okay, so there was a lot of information I just gave away for this lecture, but if there's anything that you should, have to take away, it is just, first of all, observe the real world, right? How motion behave, how performance is kind of like expressed or evoked. And also you want to think about like how motion informs the visual. You do that by asking questions of like why you need to have this specific motion. I can go a lot into about this, but I'm not going to go into that, right? You can actually find that on the Google Material Design. Or like other motion design system guidelines by other companies that actually have like a breakdown of how to approach motion design as a system. Yeah. Okay, so now we'll get to part 2, software instruction. So if you have After Effects pull up, now would be a good time to have After Effects pull up, right? Before I actually open the software, I just want to go through some terminologies. So this is just a quicker way to have you guys see like everything, right? An overview of the graph editor. So for those who don't know how to access the graph editor, in the timeline panel in After Effects, you can access it in this icon over here, right? And then, you know, so little squares I'm sure you guys are familiar with are the keyframes. And this itself is called the speed, or depending, you know, the value graph, right? As for this handle, depending on the direction, right? This is the outgoing because it's going to the right, and this is the incoming over here. If you want to switch between my value and speed graph, you just need to right click and then you switch the graph, right? Between a value and speed graph. You can actually switch within the shortcuts, the shortcuts over here, but usually I just like to right click. I don't usually, sometimes I forget like what these are because I don't click on them that much, right? This is a more important one that you guys need to know, right? When we're easing animation, we always rely on this with ease in and out, right? And then we have the linear, and then we have hold. Don't really use auto bezier, but just remember probably this 1, 2, and 3 over here. Okay? So, like I say, like we saw in like the DK Quant like GIF about like the 4 levels of animation basic. You know, first of all, we have level 1, just straight, right? This is like a speed graph, right? Nothing's happening. But then maybe we press F9, right? And we add in an ease, right? So it's gonna speed, so it's gonna like slow in, right? And then speed up and then slow out. But then we want to get to here. So this is what the workshop is about. It's about, right, creating like custom speed graph to have taper to one side so it's slow and speeds up, or the other way around. So you can find a bunch of all this like infographics or like images of explaining the speed graph. But I'll go through with you guys in After Effects, right? So let me pull it up. Okay. Here we are, finally. I hope none of you guys are thinking like, oh, God, you know, that was boring. Okay, so here I have an animation. I'll explain, and then after that we actually do, I'll kind of like recreate this, right? So over here I have tree animation. So all this basically is going back and forth from point A to point B, back to point A, right? All of them have the same keyframe data. Right? It starts here and ends there. But the way they interpolate is different. Right? When we start off with linear, right, there is nothing it's just, you can see this is the onion skin. Right? You can see the spacing basically. Right? The onion skin, that's what I meant by spacing. It's consistent, right? It's all balanced. But when we use ease, so this is a little bit hard to see. So what we can do is to press Control 3. That will bring out a preview panel, and we can actually change the frame rate to something lower. We can specify a something specific, say 8 if we want to, but actually let's do 10. Okay, but we need to stop our animation first, and then press spacebar. You can see things kind of become more choppy, right? Like a posterized frame rate. So you can see, let's take a look at ease over here. You can notice that there are a lot of like, the spacing here is very tight. It's because it's slowing down. But then in between here, the spacing is a bit wider because it's speeding up. Okay? And then when we manipulate it using the speed graph, right, you can see that it's real tight over here, and there's barely any, you know, the spacing is super wide because it's speeding up right in the middle. I'll show you the speed graphs, and then we can compare. Okay, so if you press U, you can bring out the animated keyframes. So I have 3 properties animated. So you can select all the keyframes, and then after that, click on the graph editor. If you don't do it, right, you know, let's say if I deselect things, it'll be empty. So you have to select the property. So this is the linear, let's see. This is the linear interpolation, right? Interpolation, like I say, is how like things, how the speed is kind of like modulated. So linear, nothing's going on. This is the speed, wait, is it a speed graph? Yes, this is a speed graph. Okay, so you can see that, right? It's just going at a constant speed and then changing, right? But if we look at, you know, the ease, the second one over here, it's smooth. It's exactly as I said just now. It's supposed to start slow and speeds up, and then it slows down, and it does the same thing again. And then as for the custom one, you can see how I taper off like this. Let me maybe just zoom in. So you can zoom in to fit the graph to view by clicking on this icon over here. Right. So this will give you like more more areas of control. So let me just mess around a bit. This is the third one over here, right? And you see how the spacing changes. So I can just pull this handle, right, to kind of change the speed of the graph. You can just grab the handles and pull it, and wait for it to load, and you can see the space bunching changes as well. So the steeper it is, say like this, right, the faster it's going to go. So actually, let me reset this. To quickly reset it to a point where you want to start working with the speed graph, you can select all the keyframes, and what I usually do is just to click on the easy ease, right? This will set it back to this, I guess, a very nice neutral mode. Then we can start manipulating it. So we can actually manipulate all three keyframes at once, rather than just working like this, working with one keyframe. Let's just say I want it to be reflected onto the second keyframe over here. I can select all three of them, right, and then just pull it like that. Okay, so I'm just pulling to the right-hand side, and then I can also do the incoming keyframes to do it like that. As for how much you want to taper, right, let me just solo this layer. Oh, no, too much solo. Okay. So this onion skin preset, takes a lot of processing power, so maybe it might not play very well. Oh wait, I forgot to change my frame rate. Oh, if you guys have questions, just raise your hand. Or if I'm going too fast, yeah, just let me know. I have a tendency of going too fast, right? So maybe you guys are wondering, like, how do I determine like the steepness of the curve? There's many ways to think about it. If you have the After Effects, there's a third-party plugin called Flow. It costs about $40, right? And it actually has all the easing function for you. So this type of graph is actually called it's an exponential curve. Let me show you a breakdown of like the main easing function. You don't have to memorize them because it's pretty much like the same thing. It's just how steep it is. See, when we use easy ease or easy in whatever, it's using this sine curve over here. It's pretty much very smooth. But as you kind of like make it steeper, it's called a cubic function, and then you get into quint and then circ. And then exponential is here. So this is what we were creating just now. I was showing you, right? So all you need to know is just steepness of the curve, right? I know there's a lot, but it's the same thing because they're accommodating for ease in and ease out. But just take a look at the normal ease, and you should be fine, right? So again, speed graph is how velocity change, right? So the steeper it is, the faster it's going to go. Okay, so let me come back to interpolation here again. This example. Okay, I'm going to close everything else so we can focus. Okay, right now there's no interpolation done for the ease and custom one. But we're just going to practice, right, as if you guys never used After Effects before. Only the first one is correct, it's linear. Okay, so again, right, let's select the second circle over here, right, and click on the graph editor. Again, quickest way is to, well, just click on the hotkey over here. I think you can just also right click, I guess not, wait, right click, keyframe. Nobody actually does this, right? You can just use the easy ease, and that's fine, right? And then when we want to do the custom, the workflow is to select all the keyframes, easy ease it first, and then after that, start messing with the curve. So you can start, maybe we want to have more space, right? This curve is kind of like, it's kind of the graph editor is kind of bunched up here. We want to maximize our panel. We can use the tilde key. So if you guys know the tilde key, you can maximize the panel, right? So this allows you to see everything clearly and manipulate it. And then you can start adjusting it to the speed that you want, okay? So regarding the ease function, right? I know maybe you guys were confused about the ease function, the cubic, the sine, whatever, okay? Honestly, it doesn't matter. Just do it. You just do you. Whatever feels good, looks good, all right? But I just want to give you an organized approach. One very quick way of understanding how to achieve those type of like steepness is to look at the keyframe velocity. So if you notice, if I drag towards the right, this outgoing handles, you can see that the influence is increasing. Okay, so basically, it's how much the influence is how much it affects the speed graph over here. So you can actually open these keyframes. You can actually select all the keyframes, right click, and go to keyframe velocity. Right? So if you don't want to manipulate the graph by hand, you can actually type in number. So if I want it to be steep, if I want to use a cubic function, the magic number is like 66, right? And you can set the influence to 66 for outgoing as well. See? You don't have to manipulate the graph. So by default sign, the easy ease, right? If you see the keyframe velocity is 33.33. So kind of use the number. As you increase the number, basically it becomes steeper, right? To achieve like something exponential like we first have, it's about 90. See? So that's probably even faster than just manipulating the frame itself. And I still get the same effect, just like that. Okay. So far so good? Everyone has a question? Ooh. Okay, all right, let's move on to the value graph then. Okay, so a value graph, takes into account, well, what it says, the values. So it's actually manipulating the values of, say, in this case, the x position, right? So we can actually change the value of we can change the animation just by manipulating a speed graph. In terms of, when I say change the animation, I mean the position. Over here, no matter how we manipulate the speed graph, the position is always the same, right? It goes to point A, point B, back to point A. But value graph is different because it takes into account, right, the x or the y coordinate, depending on what you're animating. Over here, it's the same animation going on. I have it going from point A to point B and back to point A. Okay, so let's select the keyframes over here, or you just can click on the property name. This will automatically select all the keyframes. We'll click on the graph editor. You can see, it's just a pyramid. Okay, and we can select all the keyframes and we can easy ease it, right? And you can see like, oh, it's it looks pretty much the same, right? Well, it kind of is. Because until we start doing things like this, because thing about like value graph is that you can make it go beyond, or it can go beyond the value that you specify. So if I were to grab this keyframe over here, and I can actually pull it downwards instead, right? So what happens now? After Effects is going to pull back the value, and then go back, right? We're manipulating value, and this is a quick way to achieve overshoot. So let's manipulate that quickly. All right, let's just wait for it to load. See, originally I had the keyframe that was set here, right? But now we can see that it's going backwards and it's bouncing as well. Okay, and then if I were to manipulate, say, the middle keyframe, this is the endpoint, right? Say if I were to move this, notice now the endpoint is suddenly closer to the start point. See, so the value graph actually changed like the spatial position of it. Most of the time I don't use value graph, I always use the speed graph, but the only time I use value graph is for overshoot effects like this. So just to recap what an overshoot is, here's a good example, right? When you're animating, usually we start from 0 to 100. But to kind of give it some sort of like flare or exaggeration, we go and have it increase in size more than it's supposed to, and it resets back to its default value. So let's actually try to implement this into the scale animation, right? So over here, I have a circle again, and it's just scaling like that. So this is achieved with just 2 keyframes. Sometimes you can do overshoot with 3 keyframes, which I think is what most people do. But I find like this is a very quick and easy way to do it, right? I'm going to reset this back to linear keyframe. And our way to reset keyframes back to linear is to hold down Control and click on the keyframe. This will switch it back to the diamond, right? I think in the latest version of the After Effects, you can actually label them. I think the school hasn't updated the After Effects yet. But anyway, if I were to play this animation, it's just scaling up. It's pretty boring. It's going 100 to 180. So let's just say for this animation, we'll make it interesting just by using overshoot. Let's select the keyframe, go to graph editor. All right, maybe we're gonna use the tilde key to open it up. Select the keyframes, right? And then just click on easy ease for now. Okay, we want it to become smaller first, and then go to its original, the bigger size, and come back down. So the curve is going to go like a U shape downwards first. oh wait, this is the speed graph. So right click, switch to the value graph, and then we pull it downwards. And then for this one over here, because like I said, we wanted to overshoot its n scale and back to its 180, so we can pull it up. So just by looking at this, you can see the graph, already someone explained it to you. As time goes, all right, it's going to go from 100 and dip down to, say, I guess this value about 95, 90, 98. You're going to go up, scale up to about 185 and back down 180. So try to have the the mindset when you're animating in the value graph, right? You're manipulating value. Okay, so that's, it's very subtle, but it kind of makes the animation more interesting already. So you can just, exaggerate it. Let me exaggerate like severely by dragging it like real down like that. Why can't I click it? Okay, there we go. But for the negative, for the down value, let's not go past 0. So maybe something like that. Okay, so it's okay. So this is the actual exaggerated version. You can actually finesse it, or if you want, add the additional keyframe. Like I say, I don't really use the value graph that much. It's mostly a speed graph. Speed graph because most of the time we already have an idea of like when things will start and when things will end, right? We don't really want to mess up with the position along the way, so we use the speed graph. Okay, this we already mentioned. So okay, let me see. Yeah, we covered it, but okay, one thing you guys may experience when you're animating is this very silly thing, this very annoying thing where your graph suddenly, wait, let me switch it back first. Oh. Lazy. Okay. Okay, let me switch it back to lazy. Yeah, this. Sometimes we're animating, suddenly we get graph like this. It's very awkward because it's like you don't know how to make sense of it. This is supposed to be one keyframe, but how does it break into 2? I prefer to have it at 1. This is because it's called, the interpolation is using Bezier, right? So you can actually you can do dramatic speed change just like that. But if you wanted to set it back to like P2 together, because the animation is not that complex, you can right click, keyframe interpolation, and switch it to continuous Bezier, right? And click OK, and it'll be together. So every time you move this, right, it will be together, and you can achieve the animation that you want. Another way to achieve this is to go to keyframe velocity, and you click on continuous over here. So that's to work around with the different type of like interpolation. Okay. The next thing we're going to cover is roving keyframes, right? Maybe you might have accidentally control-click on your keyframe and it becomes a circle, and you don't really know what that means. Okay, so roving keyframes basically somewhat like After Effects actually doing the animation for you. Again, I have an animation. Let me just show the control path. I have an animation of it going of this curve right here. Okay, I'm gonna actually reset it back to linear. Okay, let me just select it. My hotkeys. Okay, let me just open up the path. Okay, I'm going to set it back to, oops, wrong one, linear, all right? It's pretty boring. All right, just a curve going from right to left, okay? So what the roving keyframe allows you to do is that you can automatically interpolate the speed in between, like two adjacent keyframes automatically, right? So you don't need to worry about a lot of keyframes. So let me show you what it means. So when I select the keyframe, say I'm easy ease, right? And then you can manipulate the speed of 1. Oh wait, let me switch this back to normal keyframe first. Okay. Keyframe interpolation. Linear. Okay, growth across time. Okay. Alright, I forgot to revert things back to normal. Alright. Okay. Okay, let's just say this is the default that I have, right? If we have this 3 keyframes. Oh, it looks like my curve is messed up. So actually, this is also a good time to show you guys how to manipulate the motion path using pen tool. Sometimes you don't need to create perfect curves for your animation. You can make this straight path first. And then using the pen tool in the tool panel over here, the hotkey is G. We can hold down, we can hover over the keyframes and actually, create our curvature that we want to, just like that. And if you want to introduce more keyframe along the way, we can do so. But I'm not going to do it. You can also remove keyframe if you want to, or make it sharp by clicking it again, right? So right now it's ease, but this motion is kind of awkward because it's not like a linear path. It's like a circular path. Okay, so if you were to select these two keyframes, right, and then actually right-click. Actually, no. Let me switch it back to just the normal timeline mode. Right-click and rove across time. The keyframe becomes circle, and you might think like, oh, this looks like ordinary keyframe, right? But the thing is that as I stretch the last keyframe over here, notice that the keyframes, the two roving keyframes, are actually adjusting it based on the duration I specify. Let me undo that. If I were to do this without the roving keyframe, right, and play it, you see that my two keyframes stays there. Okay, so again, I'm just going to select this two keyframe and then rove across time, and then this allows me more control. Suddenly I don't need to worry about like all the keyframe in between. I just need to know when it starts and when it ends. So maybe about 3 seconds, right? Maybe that's a little bit too slow. Let's keep it down to maybe 1 second, right? And then you think to yourself, okay, that kind of works, but I wanted to refine the animation curve. So let's select the keyframe, and you can actually manipulate the curve as well, right? For the keyframe that's not roving. One thing to keep in mind is that when you try to move roving keyframe is that it reverts back to a normal keyframe. So if I were to click on this, see, right? It suddenly, becomes a square. I know it might be tiny to see, but you can see that it became a ease keyframe over here. As for the one on the right, I didn't touch it, right? But if I were to just shift it to the right, see, it becomes the ease keyframe. And then if I were to move the last keyframe, see, notice it doesn't, rove with it. It doesn't like kind of like adjust accordingly. So keep in mind, you just want to manipulate the keyframes in between. So maybe I want to have make it slow, and then after that, basically I want to have make it a very steep curve like that. Okay, that's a little bit too much because the animation is too fast. So maybe we make it 2 seconds and see what happens. Yeah, that's still a little bit too fast. Maybe I just need to lower, make the curve less steep like that. Okay, that's better, right? So that's another way of working with different types of keyframe. Okay, any questions? Sure. I hope you guys are master of like graph editor by the end of this workshop. Okay, so let's see another case study. All right, so this one is more like a technique. It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing as what we are going, it's just, simple animation. Then press U to get the keyframe, switch to the speed graph, right? Okay. I guess I forgot to delete the effects. Okay, yeah, I forgot to delete. I want to show you guys a trick, a real trick. Let's just say we have an animation like this. Okay, actually I'm just going to animate it from start so you guys at least know the process, or like how to kind of troubleshoot animation along the way. Again, let me just revert back to normal, right? Let's just say let's just try to imagine, how do we think about how to design motion? We have, so first of all, we have this like path, right? Where it's going up and going down. If you want to think about like, all right, okay, it's going to speed up real fast to this apex over here. So it's going to speed up exponentially, slow it down, and then over here, and it speeds up and then slows down over here. So with that kind of design in mind, let's try to do it. So let me just pull this up, close out the composition so we can see clearly. So this is on the speed graph. So let's just manipulate it to make it faster, right? We want it to be steep all the way first, and this part of the curve needs to be very steep. So what we can do is to pull the incoming handle for the other keyframe like that. So if I were to play it now, see, it's pretty fast, right? And then after that, we want it to slow down, so that's good. I don't know why this is like that. Okay, let's set it back. Yeah, let's set it back to normal. Oops. Okay, so let's put this up, right? And then, so maybe that's a little bit too steep, so I can adjust it. Oh wait, this is based on this keyframe over here. Hold on a second. Huh. See, sometimes the graph editor is like, no matter how much you know, it still doesn't obey you. So you have to be patient. Yeah, sometimes I also forget what I do, or you know how the curve behaves. It behaves in a very mysterious way, for sure. Okay, so yeah, I'm on speed graph, right? Yeah. Continuous Bezier. Yep. Yep. Okay. Okay. Okay, we have it speed up, and we want it to slow down, but I don't know why this is not behaving. It's not moving at all. Okay, let's try again. Sorry guys. Let's try easy in. Make it sharp. It speeds up, slow down, and then it slowly will speed it up. So we have the curve like that. Okay, it's going up. Like that, okay. All right, speed up, slow down, speed up. Maybe this needs to be, and this keyframe needs to be together. So we'll change this to a continuous Bezier, and I hope it obeys what I want to do. Okay, yes, I think it is. Okay, it speeds up, and then it slows down, all right? Let's play. So maybe that's a little bit too slow, right? You can see like it goes almost down to like 0, like nothing's going on. I think maybe because this keyframe is a Bezier, right? So it's not like a smooth curve. So what we can do, again, right click, keyframe interpolation, switch this to continuous Bezier, so they're together, and this should allow you to, yes, make it together. See, smoother now. There's no breakage. So I play it, and it speeds up like that, right? And if we want more drama, maybe over here, just it swoops up, right? So let's go over here. Okay, so this part we need to make it real steep as it goes down. So we're going to grab this incoming handle on the last keyframe and just pull it like that. See how that goes. That looks better, right? Okay. So so that's how kind of this is a lot of small troubleshooting as you're animating like the motion path of a layer or objects or whatever shapes you're creating, right? And you just need patience. But once you get the hang of it, it comes naturally. All right. So if you're struggling, it's okay. One way to enhance this animation quickly is to give it secondary motion. Remember, right? The four basic animation principle, right? We did basically what we did was the ease and the details. Well, we can't really do exaggeration, but we can give it even more details. Okay, so this is kind of boring. Not say boring, but it's moving nice and smooth, but it doesn't have some sort of personality. All right, it's very linear, and we want to give it like maybe make it shaky, right? So it's kind of maybe like it's hovering. It's like an orb that's flying. Now you can actually use an expression. Expression as small pieces of JavaScript code that you can enter to kind of create behaviors to your motion. The quickest way, I'm sure you guys are familiar with, is a wiggle function. We alt-click, we can hold Alt or Option on the Mac, I think. I forgot. Now they're on Windows. Okay, Option click on stopwatch and your text will become red. Don't worry, the keyframes are still there. We can type in wiggle, parentheses, and then you need to input 2 numbers separated by a comma. The first number is how fast, second number is how much. So I'm gonna put in 0.5, comma, say maybe 100. So what wiggle function does is that it randomly shakes a property, whatever you're on. So it's randomly shaking the position. So right now it's very little because my frequency is at 0.5. If I increase it to 5, you can see that it suddenly speeds up, like that. Okay, but that's a little bit too much. So maybe you want to do it just 1, maybe 300, and see how the motion behaves. So that's kind of awkward, and also maybe you guys don't like to mess around with code. I'll show you guys an easier way. Let me get rid of this key, the code, so you can actually just select everything, Control X, and click out, or you can alt click on the stopwatch again. If you go to your effects panel, Window, Effects and Preset, alright, I think this is very underutilized. After Effects have a lot of animation preset you can use, and with the latest update, they have like presets designed by senior and professional motion designer. So you should definitely take a look. So one very handy like preset to use is the wiggle. There's a lot of different types of wiggle for different types of properties, position, rotation, scale. If you don't want to enter expression, that's what I did. What you can do is just double click, right? With the layer selected, double click on the wiggle preset position. And it's just going to wiggle, just like that. And then you can actually just set the frequency just from the effects control on the left hand side. Okay? So I'm just going to increase the wiggle amount to 150. So at least, you know, so this is just a way to introduce like secondary motion, to add wiggle. Sometimes things don't need to move like a lot. They just need to hover or rotate randomly. You can actually wiggle scale as well. I mean, this is a circle, so rotation won't work, right? Because it's like a circle. Oh, before that, if you want to say, if you don't like the wiggle, just delete it. Just like that from the effects panel. Let's try the scale, right? Same thing. You can change the speed and change the amount, and make sure to, you know, change the. That's a little bit too much. Make sure to uncheck the separately. See, suddenly just by changing the scale, it feels like maybe it's like some sort of fairy flying in and out, right? Or like some sort of firefly. And maybe you want to just reduce the wiggle speed to 0.1, and just small things like that can enhance the scene, and you don't need to spend a lot of time on it. Okay, one of the, if you really want to wiggle several properties, there's this thing called Wigglorama. Oh, please don't crash. The Wigglorama has more settings. It does the same thing, but you can wiggle every single thing. You can wiggle the position, so I might set 150. Wiggle the scale. Okay, that's fine. And let's play. Maybe the scale can be, maybe that's too much. Let me set it to 100. And maybe the scale I can set to 150. Yeah. If you're creating a random motion, right, don't create it manually, just rely on a wiggle, but you can define the path like that. Okay. So that's a quick trick. Okay, any questions so far? Okay. All right, we're gonna have our last part of the workshop, which is to how do we implement every single thing into, say, an animation. So this is, let's just say this is the outcome. This is a very simple animation I created last night. I'm sure you guys know the Flux UX Club, right? So they have this signature event called Startup, which is the equivalent of Commotion. So I was just sampling their colors or their designs into this animation over here. But it's really something simple with shapes coming in and then with the text coming out. The idea is that the text is pushing out the shapes, and then we kind of outro the animation. Okay, and all of this can be done very quickly. Let me say first. So, first of all, we have a simple animation, boring. This is all linear keyframe. Press U, right? All linear. Maybe let's do one thing at a time. Let's just turn off the startup first. Let's focus on the positions of the shape over here. All them moving in here, right? So, you know, maybe you think to yourself, all right, let's right click, and then after that, open up the graph editor, switch to the speed graph. Okay, select the keyframe again, easy ease. Let's play that. Okay, smoother, but kind of still boring. How about we have it speed up real fast and then it slows down? Okay, so we have we select the keyframes, right, and clicking and dragging, and just pulling it. Oh, sorry, I need to select the outgoing keyframes. Push and make it steep like that. See, looks already better already, right? But then it's like, okay, they're just like moving in together. How about we have some rotation? And after that, it scales up. Okay, so let's right click, create new, and then we have a now object, and rename it, call it parent. It's good practice to always rename your layers so we know where they are, and also label them. For me, I like to rename color my now objects, now layers as green, right? And then I'm going to select all the everything, and just parent it to the now layer over here. So I want it to rotate it as it comes in. I'll press R to access the keyframe. I'll start from 0, over here, and then after that, maybe I want to spin it by, say, 79. Okay, and then after that, I'm gonna ease it. Ease the animation. The hotkey on Windows is F9. I think it's the same on Mac, but it's just you need to add a function key. Okay, so again, boring. All right, let's select both of the keyframes and examine it. Maybe like we want to make it similar, right? We want it to be fast, and after that, it slows down. Okay, and now it's like, let's try to time it exactly with the animation. Maybe I can just put it somewhere here, see how that goes. Okay, maybe we just put it at the start. Maybe that will solve everything. Yeah, so something like that, right? And maybe you want it to still have more, like a little bit of like drift motion. So maybe we can do it, make it slower. Just stretch out the keyframes. Let me just also make it steeper like that. Okay. So depending on like how you want to convey, how you want to animate this, there's many ways to animate this keyframe. Now let's do the scale. Let's have it like kind of burst out. So we will set a keyframe down, say maybe somewhere here. And then maybe after that it's going to go out about 1,000, 2,000, 2,100. Same thing. Select keyframe, F9, open up graph editor. I want it to actually have a slow acceleration. So the steepness, the steeper graph will be on the right hand side. See how that goes? Okay, that's kind of slow. Maybe I want to push the keyframes together. Maybe even faster. Okay, and we probably need to add one more rotation, as it spins out. So as it spins out, so I'm gonna press U to get to all my animated keyframes, right? So maybe I need, over this keyframe over here, I'll add maybe 150. Oh wait, hold on a sec. Okay, also a hotkey for jumping between keyframes, J, K. Yeah. J will jump backwards, K will jump forward. This also applies to markers. So if you don't have any keyframes, it will jump between the keyframes that are shown. So you have, but if there's no keyframes, but there's markers, it will jump between markers. And it will actually jump between keyframes and markers. So be mindful of that. So why is it not increasing? Oh, I think it's because we don't see the animation as it's rotating. So maybe we can push this back. Okay, so it's kind of slow for the rotation. Let's open it up. We want it to, good practice. Sometimes I just reset everything back to normal and redo things again, because that's how my brain works. But again, whatever you're comfortable with, right? I'm gonna speed it up like that. Let's see. Kind of awkward. Okay. Let's try the keyframe interpolation, switch to continuous. So maybe that will help. Oh, okay. Play. Okay, so we need this to be steeper. Okay, it needs to be steeper again. So, I think you can also, I think it's good to consider like a third-party plugin that actually does create a curve for you, and you just need to manipulate very little. But let's just say I'm okay with that, right? Because I don't want to spend too much time just wiggling, like finagling things. Now we need to just say animate the scale for the startup. Press U, I have two keyframes over here, right? And then I'm going to the graph editor, select the keyframe, ease it, Okay, I want it to be, right, again, because most of the objects are always like not in frame or they're like scaled to 0. So we always speed it up real fast. It's kind of awkward if you see the startup just slowly animate on. So we want the intro animation to be fast. And the rest is just actually adjusting the keyframes to match it. So for example, here the startup is coming up too fast, right? I want to find a moment where it's pushing out, right? And then the scale, maybe I can push it further so it's faster. Okay, something like that. Okay, and then maybe a secondary motion or exaggeration. We want to maybe color the startup text to kind of flicker between these 4 key colors before it kind of resolves to black. So what we can do is to select startup, the text layer startup, we drop it in the fill color, we set a keyframe down, press U, and then after that, okay, we want to sample the blue. Let's move down some keyframe. So I'm just going to pick the random color. Just randomly pick, and make sure my first keyframe is black, and copy it, Control C, and press again. I have 2 fill effect. Oh, okay. Okay. So I have all the different color flickering, but notice that, you know, if we actually shift this over here so we can see what's going on. There's a gradation between them. Say if you want it to be poppy and flickering, we'll use the whole keyframe. Right click, toggle whole keyframe. So it will just switch to the color, right? It will just switch the color when the timeline hits that keyframe, like that. Okay? So that only took us like, what, 5 minutes to make, right? So when you are animating, so that's my process, right? We start off with creating a primary motion where things should start and things should end. We add ease and we customize the speed graph. Then and once we've done that, we're comfortable with what we have, then we start introducing moments of like performance or drama or playfulness like this, just by changing colors or introducing secondary motion. If you want to bring this scene further, right, you know, you can rely on effects. Say you want to drop in a drop shadow. I mean, depending on the style that you're going for. Maybe drop shadow, you feather it, and then after that, let's reduce opacity. Maybe we drop in an echo. Maybe we put it, say 10 copies, and we want it to be behind, like that. Okay, that's pretty cool. So we can Control A, select all the effects, and apply it to our other shape layers. So, okay. So, you know, always find opportunity. Well, hopefully you have the style frames. You should always follow the style frame and not try to introduce new things along the way, right? But sometimes you just have no time. You're just animating and you're designing animating within After Effects. So you need to find opportunities to add some flair to it. One last thing you can do is to add adjustment layer. And I usually like to add posterized time, switch the frame rate down to 12. It kind of makes it more organic, because sometimes when motion is too smooth, it's just like kind of awkward. So this rendering, let's wait for it. Okay, right. Kind of gives you that hand-drawn look because it's on 2s. Okay, but you can also add a boy effect, add a texture to make it more kind of simulate like hand-drawn stuff, right? This is just a quick way. It's just me dropping out posterized time for fun and see how it goes. Okay. All right, so yeah, that's the end of my demonstration. Anybody have any questions? No? Really? Okay. Okay. All right. Anyway, now onto another sponsor message. Okay, so for those who are interested in learning about expression and After Effects, I have a Domestika course, right? This place is always on sale. It's perpetually on sale. So that's it. It's how they market it. So you can buy my course or any course for like less than $10. I'm gonna provide a code on Discord later that allows you to get like 15% off. Code will be called Moving Love. I previously did it, but I think it only lasts for 1 month. So I'll run it again, and then you guys can by the course. Yeah. So so basically what you are creating is this. Gotta pull it up. Yep. So you basically create. All right. So that's the end of the workshop. You know, you guys are free to leave, and if you guys want to stay back, chit chat, or like ask me questions, you know, feel free to. I guess I have about 15 minutes left. Yeah, so you can, you know, kind of utilize this time right now. No, thank you for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.